They called her the Blood Countess, the woman who bathed in blood. Centuries ago, behind the cold stone walls of Csejte Castle, in the Kingdom of Hungary, there were whispers of young girls disappearing. Servants trembled, villagers locked their doors, and noblemen turned away. At the centre of these rumours stood a powerful woman, the Countess Elizabeth Báthory, who was accused of crimes so gruesome they would stain histories for centuries to come. But who was she really? A sadistic killer? A victim of politics? Or just one mortal woman who gave birth to one of Europe's darkest legends and came to be known as the Countess who bathed in blood? Welcome to Vortex Mythology. If you are enjoying this content, please do like the video, subscribe. Accounts in this video may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Let's begin. Elizabeth Báthory was born in 1560 into one of the oldest and most influential noble families in Hungary. Her relatives included the mighty kings, bishops and warriors, and through marriage she became even more powerful. In 1575 she wed Ferenc Nadasdy, a soldier known as the Black Knight of Hungary by his own enemies. Naturally, he went to war often, and every time he did, it was Elizabeth who managed their estates with an absolute authority unlike any woman from the time. According to court documents and witness testimonies, it was during these years that strange disappearances began. Local peasants claimed their daughters were sent to the castle to serve and never returned. Some accounts described horrific scenes like girls being found with severe burns, mutilations, or even frozen to death on some accounts. In one witness's words, the walls were red with blood. When Nadasdy died in 1604, the rumours only deepened. Investigators later reported that Elizabeth's trusted servants started with luring young peasant girls into the castle and then moved on to daughters of minor nobility as well. There, they were put under extreme physical pain through methods like beatings with a club, needles being driven under fingernails, and long exposure to the winter cold. But why? Well, some witnesses claimed the Countess believed the blood of virgins could preserve her youth, and that's what led to such brutal atrocities. However, no direct evidence of this ritual was ever found in the official trial records. The idea of literal blood bathing appeared only after her death through folklore and later Gothic literature. Yet, the brutality of these tales was so intense that it became the symbol that defined her name. In 1610, complaints had reached the Hungarian king, Mátyás. He ordered an investigation led by byword Thurzó, the Palatine of Hungary, and effectively the king's right hand. When Thurzó's men arrived at Csejte Castle, their reports were chilling. They had found dying girls and bodies hidden within the walls. Elizabeth was placed under house arrest, and over 300 witnesses were questioned. Some testified that they had seen her commit the acts personally. Others admitted they had only heard of them. Several of her servants confessed under torture, so it creates an air of doubt on their reliability today. Still, the testimonies were enough for conviction. 3 of Elizabeth's servants were executed, while she was never brought to public trial. Just one of the many perks of being a noble woman in that era. But she didn't escape punishment completely and was imprisoned for life within her castle walls. They bricked up her windows and left only a small slit for food and air. At the age of 54, she passed away in 1614. Her last recorded words were reported to be, "I am innocent." Do you believe that? Or do you also doubt her guilt like historians still do? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe while you're there. Despite her last words, most struggled to believe her and think it was political theatre to save her faith one last time. That was because Elizabeth Báthory was one of the richest women in Hungary and owned vast lands that held immense power. At the time, the king owed her family a large debt. And guess how he can make it all go away? By binding her in an atrocious crime. And that's exactly what happened. Now, this is just speculations, but the author of Infamous Lady, Kimberly Craft, believes it all to be an enemy conspiracy to take her fortune. But Tony Thorne says she was actually cruel, but her crimes were blown out of proportion. The claim that she had up to 650 victims became legend, but it's impossible to prove and most likely exaggerated by centuries of fear and rumour. But one thing is certain, her case reflects the worst fears of her time. Female power, noble privilege, and extreme tensions between superstition and justice. Soon after her death, the myth grew into something far worse. In the 18th to 19th centuries, writers began connecting Bathory to vampire folklore. She was recast as the female Dracula, an immortal aristocrat feeding on youth and beauty. The idea of bathing in blood symbolised both her vanity and her evil, and her tale spread as a warning to women who sought power or defied moral boundaries. This transformation was helped by the rise of Gothic literature. Authors like Sheridan Le Fanu and later Bram Stoker drew inspiration from Eastern European legends of blood and immortality. By the time Dracula was published in 1897, Elizabeth Báthory's legend had already merged with vampire myth. To the public, she was no longer a historical noblewoman. She was the Blood Countess, an immortal monster in a castle preserved in crimson. And what they didn't know was the real woman behind the legend whose story was shaped by a brutal world. A world plagued by war and witch trials, where violence was part of noble authority. Servants being tortured was daily routine. Bathory's cruelty may have been a reflection of herself, but it's undeniable that it was magnified by social hysteria and became the perfect fuel for myth. And, given the context, yet another example of a woman cast as evil for greater power plays, in this case land. If we take much of the witch trials as an example, where women who own land could be easily accused of witchcraft and lose all their property and land, often to the very male accuser, it is not a large leap to see how, just maybe, these inflated stories could be used as political power play and land grab. So, was Elizabeth Báthory truly the most prolific female serial killer in history, or the victim of political intrigue and folklore gone wild? The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Records confirm the deaths of several young women under her care. Yet the exaggerated body counts, the tales of bathing in blood, and the image of her as a vampire all grew long after her confinement. She has inspired books, operas, films, and even metal bands, her name synonymous with beauty and power twisted into legend. Today, historians and writers revisit her story not to glorify it, but to understand how fear and fascination can shape memory. She stands at the crossroads between history and horror, where truth and myth feed each other endlessly. Centuries later, the shadow of Elizabeth Báthory still stains history's imagination. Her story reminds us of how easily truth can drown in the echo of legend, where power, fear, and myth intertwine. Whether villain or victim, her legacy stands as a haunting reflection of humanity's obsession with youth, cruelty, and immortality. But one thing's for sure. History doesn't just remember her for the lives she took. It remembers her for what she became. A woman who turned blood into legend. If legends intrigue you, don't forget to subscribe to Vortex Mythology so the next chilling tale can find you before bloodthirsty entities do.